Hello and welcome to another video. Now, in my country, in the United States, we have a saying, as American as apple pie. And in fact, there is a particular kind of apple pie that is particularly associated with American cuisine, and that's more or less what we're going to make today. Now, I've made a few interesting tweaks along this particular recipe because within the variation of American apple pie recipes, I wanted to kind of show how you can make a dessert that might be more friendly towards, for example, people trying to lose weight and eat slightly lower glycemic foods, or who might maybe be pre-diabetic, or if your diabetic uncle is coming along, something that would be easier in terms of sugar management. So I decided to make these sorts of changes here. Of course, that's a vast topic and I can't really describe it in detail today, except to say that if people are struggling with things like blood sugar, not only does the amount of carbohydrates matter, but also how quickly it hits your system. So one thing I've done here is to substitute highly refined sugars for less refined sugars, simply because they break down and enter the body more slowly. So that was the basic concept of this, but otherwise this is an apple pie that would be perfectly at home anywhere in the United States. So now for the ingredients. I've decided not to change the pie crust much. First of all, we have about 400 grams of all-purpose flour. We have 30 grams, that's about 2 tablespoons of sugar. So a little bit less sugar than we might expect for this much pie crust, and 165 grams of butter. And I will have conversions to US metrics in the description when I post it. For the filling, we start with 6 Granny Smith apples. This is a kilogram, or 2.2 pounds. We'll have juice of a lemon. Can't forget the cinnamon, of course. And then, of course, sugar. Now, in most cases, American apple pie recipes will either use straight white sugar, or they use half white sugar and half brown sugar. Now, the nice thing about brown sugar is that it's also very close to highly unrefined cane syrup. So I have here, this is like whole raw sugar. So this is basically dried cane syrup. And here I have turbinado sugar, which is partially refined but not highly refined. So I'm going to put in half turbinado and half dried cane syrup. And then, of course, a beat egg to brush the top, make it look nice and golden when it's done cooking. So, first step, we're going to make the pie crust. So I also have half a teaspoon of salt I've added here, and I have 60 to 70 milliliters of cold water sitting in the freezer. And that'll become important in a moment. But I'm going to start by whisking these dry ingredients together. And you can do that with a balloon whisk, which I have here. You could also do it with a fork. It's also worth noting the next step also mixes it pretty well. Now in the US we use something called I think it's called a pastry knife or something, basically to fold the butter in. But in my experience, fingers actually work quite well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this butter and just basically cut it into pieces. And then I'm going to work it in with my hands, basically by squeezing the dough, squeezing the butter and the flour together. But if you try to put it all in all at once, it becomes difficult. So hence it's better if we cut it into pieces first. So let's go ahead and do that first. In theory, I've heard of people doing it with a fork, but in practice that's a whole lot of work. Now, our end result here, we're intending a sandy consistency, a consistency like damp sand on the beach. So basically, I'm just going to keep working the dough with my hands like this until it's all even, and then I will be back. And so here we now have the buttery butter, flour, sugar, salt mixture here that will act as the basis for the dough. And you can see it has this consistency where if you pick it up and squeeze it, it kind of will form a crumbly ball, and that's exactly what we're looking for here. So next we're going to drip in cold water, a little bit at a time, and work it into this until we get a pliable dough. So I'm going to grab my water out of the freezer, and I usually start putting the water in like 10 minutes before I start. If you put it in too long, then you'll have ice, and that'll be hard to work with, but if you put it in not long enough, it won't be cold. So here, you may be able to see that there is just a little bit of ice forming in the water. That's perfect. That means this water is at freezing temperature, which is exactly what you want. I'm going to pour a little bit in. I'll work it in. A little more. I expect to use most of this, but you'll see that the dough starts to come together and it starts to become less crumbly. This is what we want. Anyway, once I'm done forming the dough this way, I will be back. So here we have the pie crust. Now, interestingly enough here, I probably could have used the cane syrup instead of the sugar. Maybe sometime I'll try that, but it's not a lot of sugar, and most of the impact here is going to be from the starch anyway. So anyway, this will then get wrapped and set aside, probably mostly in the refrigerator until I'm ready to work with it, and next we'll be onto the filling. So first I've measured out my ingredients. I have about 75 grams of each of these. This is like total of maybe a third of a cup each, or you could even go a little higher than that or a little lower depending on your preferences, but this is the cane syrup and this is the turbinado. And then I have a teaspoon of cinnamon, and I will juice this lemon as we get in. The next step is to peel and slice these apples. And so what I'm going to do is I will peel one of them, and then I'll show you how to slice them. So to slice an apple like this, what we're going to do is we're going to cut just to the side of the core, and then we'll flip it on and slice. And then we will repeat. So and we'll keep repeating until we're all the way done. This gives us really nice flat sliced pieces. And I will do this with all the rest of the apples, and then we will continue. After each apple, I'm going to squeeze a bit of lemon over it and toss. Once I'm done with the whole lemon, it doesn't make sense to add more, but the purpose here is mostly to keep the apples from browning. So we'll go ahead and do that, and I'll keep going. So in the ingredients, I forgot like a tablespoon or two of flour also added. So I'm going to sprinkle the flour and the cinnamon on top of the apples. Then I'm going to toss them a bit lightly here. And then I will add the sugars. And I will stir to combine. And at this point, the filling is basically ready. Now, we use Granny Smith apples here because they hold a lot of flavor when they cook, and they hold up their shape really well. If you don't have Granny Smith apples, you can use Golden Delicious and maybe cut the sugars back a little bit. But Granny Smith apples definitely make a better pie. So here we go. Here is our filling. And next up, we will roll the crust out, add the filling, and put it in the oven. So I've cut this into a large piece and a small piece. I'm going to start with the large piece because that'll be the bottom of the pan. I'm going to form it into a ball. And I'm going to smash it as a first step. Then I prefer to put it on baking paper, and then I'm going to roll it out. You can also do this on a floured board, but I think it's easier to work with on the paper here. So once I get it nice and thin, I will be back and we'll go ahead and put it on the tin. So in rolling it out, I did add a little bit of flour on the top and bottom just to make it roll easier. And now that I have it nice and large, I'm going to go ahead and put it in my pie pan. And looks like I have it plenty big this time. But I don't think I have it quite centered. So I'll fix that by just taking a few pieces here. And this won't actually be visible when we're done, as you'll see. But this gives me some space so that I can properly crimp the top when I'm done. So once this is all done, I'll be back with, well, I'm going to do the next set. I'll do the top. But first, we can go ahead and fill this. And if I have more filling than I have pie, well, then just have to do something else with the apples, I guess. Keep in mind these will cook down a bit, so I tended to mound them over a little bit. And this may not be too many. Yeah, this will be good. Just about perfect. Then when I'm at the end, just pour the remaining sugar, lemon juice mixture onto the top. Spread it around gently, and then we'll make the top pie crust. I'll roll out the top pie crust and then we'll put it on. So now I have this done. going to flip it over the top. Straighten it out a little bit. And then basically I'm going to crimp the edges. And after crimping the edges, I will be back and I will cut the holes on the top and brush it with egg. Okay, so first I've cut steam vents with a little paring knife, basically in the quarters. And basically the point of the steam vents are that they will allow the steam to escape as it cooks and basically prevent it from ballooning up. Then I have painted this whole pie with this egg wash, and that will make it come out really nice and golden when we're out of the oven. And this will go in the oven at 180 Celsius, that's 375 Fahrenheit. We'll cook it until it's golden brown and the apples inside are cooked. At any rate, we'll be back when this is out of the oven. So I just took this out of the oven. It's been in there for about 45 minutes. It's golden brown on the top. You can see the apple juice unfortunately coming through a little bit. But this is smelling and looking absolutely delicious. Once this has cooled down a bit, then I'll do the taste test. So might be another 20 or 30 minutes. And now for the taste test. This came out just a little bit soggy, so next time I'd probably add a little more flour, but it still smells really delicious and very, very, very good. This is like a really, really, really good apple pie. I'm really happy with it. The tartness of the lemon and the sour apples, the firmness of the apples, the flavor of the cinnamon, the crunchiness of the pie crust, it's really, really good. This is exactly what I was shooting for. Well, if you find this content interesting and useful, I hope I've earned a like and a subscription from you. And please feel free to comment and share these videos as well. At any rate, I hope that you enjoy making this dish as much as I have, and I hope you enjoy eating it as much as I am. And beyond that, I want to say thank you very much for watching, bon appetit, and see you next week.